this is it's just for the benefit of everybody else who can't join us tonight. So again, thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Sandra. I'm with the Mortgage Center. And many of you have seen some of our webinars before. And I actually have Jessica Chick here, and she is a lawyer with Sorbera Law. Now, Jessica, you have a very particular area of practice that's very pertinent for tonight's topic. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're going to be chatting about tonight.
Sure. So I work in Guelph at Sorbera Law, and I practice exclusively family law. So, helping separated people navigate their separation and divorce, and also helping people come up with marriage contracts or cohabitation agreements to determine how they're going to deal property or support.
Right, and so tonight's webinar topic, and we're going to be chatting for about 10 minutes, I think, is keeping the matrimonial home or moving on, going through a separation, and how to determine what the best options are. And I know we have helped hundreds of people step through this door of separation and divorce. And when do you find is the best time to speak to a lawyer, and maybe we can chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, as soon as possible. That's what I'm going to say. So if you haven't separated yet and you're not sure about your rights and obligations, if you are going to separate, it's a good time to speak to a lawyer, or after you or your spouse has decided that you're separating. It's the best time to just get that information right away so you can determine what to do. You don't have to do anything right away, but it's good to know what you're getting yourself into and what's going to be coming up next, and what other professionals you might need to get in contact with.
Yeah, and when you say early, so this is kind of like an interesting thing, because I often people would have like the matrimonial home, or maybe they may have multiple properties. And I find, people are always most concerned about their living arrangements,
Mhm.
right? And so they'll come to see me, and I can't really move forward without a concrete separation agreement. And I think we were talking about this earlier. What's the flip of that, Jessica?
Right. And sometimes it's hard to know whether you're going to be able to buy your ex out if you don't have a pre-approval. So, or you've not talked to a mortgage broker yet. So it becomes one of those situations where it's good to involve both professionals as soon as possible, because you can get an idea of what your support obligations might look like, or what value you're going to assign to the home for the purposes of buying each other out, if that's how you choose to proceed. So it's nice to get both of those professionals involved early to figure out if you can even do the thing you'd like to do.
Yeah, and I almost find that working in parallel with your lawyer and your mortgage professional helps, because I know I talk to a lot of people who have maybe gone through their bank, and their bank says, well, we can't even give you an idea until you have a separation agreement. And I think that's what really works well when people come to our office. And I forgot to tell people this is a mortgage center in Guelph. And what we're going to do in this webinar is we're going to give you the information where you can contact us. But like, you almost have to do it in parallel. Like I can kind of give people an idea. Okay, well, if the child support and the spousal support is this, and we're thinking kind of that the buyout is going to be this, we can sort of give you a range of what you can qualify for in a mortgage, and even that may or may not be affordable for people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important to work in parallel. Now, one of the things that I've come up with just recently is valuations on properties.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different ways. And I think that would be, especially now when there's a bit of a shift in valuations in the real estate market, like it is May 2022, and rates are up. And so I think people are kind of pulling back on buying real estate, which is affecting just the value of real estate. So can you comment on that, like in determining the value of real estate for a matrimonial home?
Yeah, and just even to take a little bit of a step back and defining what a matrimonial home is, right? So a matrimonial home is the property where the spouses ordinarily resided on the date of separation. So even if you aren't on title to the matrimonial home, you have different rights that arise because of the Family Law Act. So even if you're not on title, you can still have possessory rights with that home. So that's why it's really important to go to a lawyer quickly, because if you're solely on title, the post-separation increase in value of the home can become the hotly contested thing where you've got to go to a lawyer and get independent legal advice about that. Where you're jointly on title, you can kind of figure out where you're going to value it. Is it going to be the date that one or the other spouse moved out, or the date of the transfer, or the date of separation? That's kind of something you can negotiate to some extent. But those things you kind of need independent legal advice on. But in terms of the method of valuation, it kind of depends which process you're in. So there's a spectrum of, a purely negotiated settlement where you just you both have lawyers or one of you have a lawyer and you negotiate the terms. You can do mediation, arbitration, a collaborative law process, which is a process that is again a negotiated settlement type scenario, or the other end of the spectrum is court. But in the court scenario, the best way to value a home is to get a formal appraisal done by a certified appraiser.
Yeah.
But at any point, you can negotiate a settlement, whether you're inside or outside of court. So more often in negotiated settlements, you might not go with a formal appraisal, but you might go with, okay, we're going to get a few opinions of value from a few different realtors, average them out and figure out what the value is, or a trusted real estate agent that you jointly retain, or you agree on a value because the two of you might have information about your home and decide on the value as between yourselves. So those are the
Right.
different.
So there's different, yeah, because I do know like when it comes to like sort of the financial piece and sort of how we set up the financing. What the financial institutions are looking for is a appraisal done by a certified real estate appraiser. And I kind of feel that that might be, I don't know if it's a more accurate valuation, but it's certainly a more objective valuation, in my opinion, because like the financial institutions, although real estate agents can kind of give an opinion of value, there's sort of a vested interest there in selling the home. So, there is a cost for that. And it's depending on like the value of the house. It's usually somewhere between $500 to $700, but I always say it's like good money spent
I
because
agree. Yeah.
that's what the financial institutions are looking for when it comes to financing and like doing the spousal buyout.
Yeah, and
Now,
a judge in a court process agrees with you, Sandra, because they typically are going to want to see a formal appraisal with comps, with comparative values, right? They think that more often than not that an opinion of value is a realtor trying to get your business. And
yeah, there you go. and you know what? Selling the house is a bit of a different valuation than valuing the house for lending or like separation purposes. Now, one of the things that we had talked about was a sort of like a more gentle approach to separation. And I'm finding that, a lot of times when I'm talking to people, they've already kind of come to the conclusion that they're want to part ways and they just want to make it sort of, it's not an adversarial process. So tell me a little bit about sort of that approach that you can take with clients, in that approach that you're sort of embarking with them on.
Sure. So one good example of that I've recently become trained in is the collaborative family law approach. And in the collaborative model, both parties work with their lawyers and jointly retain other professionals who they involve quite early in the process who help navigate the separation. So you might hire a jointly retained financial professional to help you determine how you're going to divide up your assets and debts, what the support is going to be, whether a spouse needs retraining to get back into the work field, that type of thing. You might also retain a family professional who might be a social worker that's going to help you come up with a parenting plan. So in that process, both the parties, the lawyers, and any professionals they engage, they all sign one contract called a participation agreement. And that participation agreement lays out, this is how we are deciding we want to separate. We don't want to go to court. We don't want to lie or hide or take advantage of a mistake that the other party might make. So we're going to give full and frank financial disclosure. We're going to talk about what our interests are and what we actually want at the end of the day. And everyone's working together to help the family transition from married to separated, without driving up legal fees, without, why, why pay for me when you can spend that money on your kids or your new house or something like that. It's just helping families transition is really the collaborative approach.
Yeah, and I feel like more and more people are kind of taking that step forward.
Yeah.
And you said, like, I think that what I love about working with you, Jessica, is that you said, like, why pay me when you can use that money in a different uh, way, right? Because if you've already kind of come to terms with that you should be parting ways,
Yeah.
I'm of the belief, like, let's just get her done.
Yeah. Who needs the stress? I don't.
No. Well, and this is just speaking of stress. So, like, one of the things that I find that people get stressed out about is, like, especially now with finances, banks are very restrictive on what they can and can't do. And it's super hard to qualify these days for a mortgage, even if everything is nice and tidy. Got great credit, no debt, your T4 income. Like, and so I sometimes find that people's stress is like, I want to stay in the home, but my bank has already turned me down. And where I see a lot of people coming to me, sometimes through the lawyer, saying, hey, you know what, maybe you need to talk to a broker because they have a different, they have more than just one option available for financing. And that's something that kind of can alleviate people's stress. And you had mentioned that too, like, is if there's children, sometimes that stability in a home might make up for. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? Like, we had sort of talked about some of the creative approaches that you have come
Yeah.
up with.
That's
Yeah.
what I was about to say. You and I have kind of discussed more than once some different creative options to help one spouse stay in the home. So if it's important to both parents that the children remain in the home maybe until they're finished school or something like that, you can come up with different options to make that work, even if you wouldn't qualify through a typical bank. So I think one thing we talked about was creating a rental unit within the home. Another thing would be, I've had a case where the mom had 4 or 5 children, and it's really hard to find a place to rent when giving all the children bedrooms. So what they did in that case was the father agreed to give a portion of his equity in the home to her, set off against prospective child support. So she wasn't going to be getting that monthly child support that she normally would get, but to her it was more important to stay within the home, and she would make do and make it work to make sure she could stay there and have her children have stability. So the same thing goes with spousal support. You can try and lump sum out a spousal support scenario. Of course, all of these things have to be negotiated. And
yes.
So let's
because both parties have to agree on it, right? Yeah.
So you have to, you have to have both parties say yes, which can sometimes be the difficulty, but there's lots of different creative ways you can try and set off other claims that you might have. So even if, let's say mom has a large pension and dad wants to stay in the house, the dad might say, okay, I don't want half of your pension that was accrued during the marriage. I want you to have your pension and be able to retire, and I want to keep the house, and my retirement plan will be selling the house when I retire. So there's different things you can come up with to try and make it work. And that's when it's nice to have a broker involved, because you also can come up with those
creative scenarios. Yeah. And this is wonderful. Now, time has flown, Jessica. We are at the 15-minute mark. We are going to provide this video on YouTube, but how can people get a hold of you, and sort of what would be sort of the next step if they wanted to reach out?
So you can contact our firm. Our website is saberalaw.com, and we can put that in the info, I'm sure.
Yeah,
And you can just give us a phone call, or shoot me an email and set up an initial meeting, and we can get into the particular facts of the case.
that's awesome. Now, for that, and not to get too far into the weeds, tell us a little bit about, so for example, like the work that I would help do for a client, they would pay me sort of at the end of the transaction if there is a fee. How does it work when you're working with a lawyer? Because I think some people might be curious about that.
Yeah, it really depends on the lawyer and the firm that you end up choosing to retain. Most lawyers, in a typical case, they're going to want some sort of retainer payment up front, so some sort of deposit. But many lawyers, if there is an asset that's going to be sold or be transferred from one party to the other, so there's going to be a payment made, they might allow you to sign an acknowledgement and direction that they'll be paid when the house is sold or transferred.
Yeah.
So that can be, it depends on the lawyer whether they're willing to do that, but that's certainly something.
But there are options for people, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And we look forward to helping people. And the really neat thing about working with us is we are professionals. We keep clients' information. We know how to work with confidential information. So I just wanted to ensure the viewers that when they do contact us, that we are professionals, and we do this on a daily basis and protect our clients' confidentiality.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anyway, have a great day. Good night.